two, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. I know if you're looking at the screen, you think this guy's really late for the wrong conference, and probably so. But when the subject of technology was decided upon for this particular conference in San Jose, I had conversations with several of the folks who were on the conference committee like myself. And one of the things we thought might be beneficial was to take a look from 3 different perspectives of the role of enabling technologies, if you will, technologies that are, if you will, designed for an airport and not to a specific technology, generating greater flexibility. Hi, my name is Mark Sapp, and I am fortunate enough to be serving in the capacity of Vice Chair of the Corporate Committee at the national level this year. With that being the case, we have 3 guys up here who are going to spend some time talking to you from, again, different perspectives. And this will be about technology, not for the sake of technology, but technology to support the business challenges and opportunities. The next slide that you see here it talks a bit about enabling technologies, and I think these guys offer you 3 different ideas or 3 different views of the same subject that hopefully you'll find of value. On my left is Bob Swensen. I've known Bob, well, in the center is Bob Swensen. I've known Bob for a number of years here in San Jose. Before he joined San Jose in a number of capacities over the last, dozen or so years, he spent time at JFK. Before technology played as much of a role as it does today in giving the airport greater flexibility over existing bricks and mortar. To his left, and the guy probably I should have started with, is Dan Weber, who I knew from his days at Love Field. He is the Deputy Director at Fresno Yosemite International. Dan is going to offer, if you will, views from more of the director level chair on concerns and considerations. Bob's going to be talking about the landside, airside operations perspective, and last but certainly not least is Jim Wheeler from Sacramento. Tried to find people who had a very good role and an idea of the theme that we're going to be exploring today, that we're all members, excuse me, SWAT. With that being the case, I'm not going to bore you with a whole lot of facts and details about these guys. They're much smarter about who they are and what they do than I am. If I could go back to the, there we go. I think I missed one here. Yeah, never, ever, ever do an IT project at an airport. That's really, I think, where we want to start. It's not about the technology. What's it about? It's about not buying toys for techies, but if you will, clearly and correctly understanding what your airport's specific challenges and opportunities are. What are your business issues? What are your needs? What are you trying to accomplish? And then once you figure that out and which button to push, then consider, if you will, the 3 things that airports and their airline constituents share with us time and time again, and that's cost containment, risk mitigation, and revenue generation are business issues that airports and their airline constituents deal with on a day-to-day basis. They're business issues. It's all about finding the right role for technology as it relates to the business. Fortunately, you can't see all of this here because the little box down the side, but basically what this is talking about is improving terminal optimization, whether it's existing bricks and mortar or a new build. I can remember when Bill Sherry first showed up here in San Jose from Fort Lauderdale. One of his attributable quotes, probably one of the ones that I'm most familiar with, is, you know, here I moved to Silicon Valley. I don't work at a low-tech airport. I work at a no-tech airport. And if you look back at where San Jose was at that point in time, that was a pretty accurate statement. And so challenged with, in a down economy, improving the facility with the Terminal B, replacing the other stuff that was there and upgrading Terminal A and moving forward, they really had to wrap their heads around what role does technology play in optimizing the facility and conserving costs, which in turn also help mitigate the risk and at the end of the day generate additional revenues generate additional revenues by offering a business case that allows Hainan or allows ANA to look at San Jose as a very good opportunity to move forward. Now, okay, I got those, and I'm still hitting the wrong button. I have senior moments every now and then. The things that are up here, I'm not into public reading. You can pretty much see for yourself, and that's really where I wanted to be when I was talking a bit about San Jose earlier on. But they achieved a significant savings in using technology to meet the business issue they had, the challenge they had of going from a no-tech, maybe a low-tech airport, into an airport that used technology for greater functionality and greater flexibility to serve the customer base as well as the airline base. Sacramento saved a ton of money as well. Why? Instead of building a larger facility, they could build a more contained facility, drive better utilization of ticket counter space and gate space by technology that allowed the airlines, based upon their schedules and their frequencies, to get better utilization of the gates without having one gate dedicated to an operator who was flying maybe 2 of Barbie's dream jets every day, by allowing the airport to have greater flexibility to provide the airline their native, accurate branding of their operation while they were in operation. Those were the 2 medium hubs, 2 small hubs. Myrtle Beach, I don't know how many of you out here on the West Coast are familiar with Myrtle Beach. Highly seasonal seasonality. It's one of the golf meccas, and they have about 7 months out of the year that are relatively flat, but the other 5 months tend to bring people in from all over the United States and Canada and for golf vacations. So what they wanted was the ability, when they moved from what they had been operating in for 42 years to a new facility, to get better utilization, to be able to increase their air service development while keeping the cost per employment at a reasonable level. Interesting story about Myrtle Beach. Their new terminal opened, a couple of years ago at this point. About 10 years ago, they had FAA funding, everything in place to build a replacement terminal of the existing structure on the other side of the airfield. Until the high-priced rooftops in Myrtle Beach, who were on the other side, did not want extra vehicular traffic coming through their neighborhoods and created what's called the CAB, Civil Aeronautics Board, but the Community Appearance Board, who challenged the grants and the funding and actually won. Myrtle had to give all the money back to the government and go back to square one. So what they looked at was a contiguous building with the existing terminal. Then when the new facility opened, going back and retrofitting and bringing up to speed and standards the previous terminal. So that's where they are today, and that's what they've done. Fresno, interesting case in Fresno as well. The very best RFP I have ever seen. 3/4 of one page long. And how many of you know Brendan Carmody? Anybody in the office know Brendan Carmody? He was the deputy director there at the time. Brendan, former American Airlines guy who spent some time offshore and loved to use the $3 or $4 words multiple times in every sentence. But basically this was his, I think his piece de resistance. And he basically said, we need better functionality. We need to do some things here. We don't have any money. Can you help us? And that, it was more of a functional and economical pitch than anything else. What was the compelling event? About 3 or 4 years before that, they had taken the ground level linear concourse, extended that, and built what's called the pod, which is the elevated gates at the end of the linear concourse. But that being the case, they found out they had asbestos abatement issues in the ticket lobby. We're talking 2007, 2008. What was the economy like in the Central Valley in that period of time? That big sucking sound going south, as H. Ross Perot once said. And with that being the case, that was the, if you will, the seed that was planted under Russ Widmar's leadership. And the guy who's now the director there, Kevin Michael, was the airport architect and Dan's boss today. And they really seized upon the opportunity, as Jim Patterson was saying earlier this morning in the first session, to look at what Sacramento had done and look at what San Jose had done. Keep the cost per employment low. They didn't have the money to go out and build a new ticket lobby. They needed to be able to use technology in a manner that allowed them to fix the problem with the asbestos abatement and move forward while continuing daily operations. How did that happen? A 16-month project. The first thing they did for 4 months, they blew the back wall forward 9 feet. That allowed the engineering people from CSHQA to come in and do the core infrastructure for all of the network environment as well as the structured cabling. Beyond that, for the next 6 months, they put a wall up. For the next year, they put a wall up between the left side and the right side. They moved everybody to the left side while they worked on the right side. Then they moved everybody from the right side to the left side. And at the end of 16 months, the wall came tumbling down. It was a full shared use environment. Funny thing about it was the airlines were a bit skeptical at first, at least the local station managers were a bit skeptical at first. But as they became more familiar with the fact that there was somebody on site who could fix the keyboard when an agent spilled a cup of coffee, or who could actually, swap out printer stock when they couldn't issue boarding passes or bag tags, it became the point where Fresno still didn't have a lot of money, but the airlines were coming and saying, when are you going to do that at the gates? And you guys wound up doing it at the gates too, and they are a full shared use facility as well. Now, moving again down the size line food chain here, Bellingham, Washington. Familiar with Bellingham? Bellingham, Washington is 38 miles south of the Canadian border. It's also known for the British Columbians as Vancouver South when it comes to an airport. Allegiant has struck gold up there. It is a huge market. Bellingham, were in a very small and outdated facility. They were able to fund a $25 million project to go in and redevelop the existing building plus a large expansion and a modernization program. What was Bellingham's concern? They wanted to make sure that if there were fluctuations in the currency equivalents, if there were new entrants that wanted to come to the market, they were positioned to future-proof their airport, to move forward, using technology as the toolkit to get them from where they were to where they wanted to be. The last one to talk about, Eagle County, Vail, Colorado. Really nice little airport, 5 gates, relatively new within the last 7 or 8 years, terminal building. They have 2 gates that are United, 1 gate that's Delta, and 2 gates that are American. Then they have several hard stands beyond the end of the gates 4 and 5 were American operated. 9 weeks before ski season, not last year, but the previous year, Air Canada calls and said, we'd like to try the market, eh? And they, being the folks at Eagle County, thought, well, this is kind of crazy. How do we do that? Well, luckily, the people with Delta and American were saying, hey, sure, that's fine. Charge us for what we use when we use it at the airport. We don't have any problem on a complimentary schedule, as long as we have the full use of our native technology to be able to share the space. We don't want to be common, but we're okay with sharing. And so they started with gates 4 and 5. Now, the way that worked out for Eagle County is not only were they able to accommodate the Air Canada frequencies that were starting up in an air service development and revenue generation program, they also had the opportunity to take additional frequencies that Delta added, 1 additional frequency out of Minneapolis and the 2nd additional frequency out of Atlanta during peak sea season. So 2 highly seasonal airports, Myrtle and Vail, using, if you will, technology as the toolkit to hit their business challenges and overcome the objectives that they hit, the objections that they had in the past of not being able to support the amount of work that they wanted to see and the amount of carrier activity that they were looking to see. That kind of sets the theme to what I wanted these gentlemen to share with you today. I'm out here talking to you because they're the smart ones, they're the people who work with it every day, but in summary, the one thing I think I would leave you with, that everybody who is a stakeholder has to be satisfied at the end of the day. The airlines can't feel that they're being punished or penalized. The cost per employment cannot be unmercifully or unnecessarily out of reach. And the airport has to be able to improve and engage the customer experience by allowing the airlines to be who they are and to do what they do in the best manner, the most cost-effective, and most service-responsive manner possible. That being the case, I know Dan wants to talk to you about airlines.
Thank you, Mark. My perspective on this whole thing is working with the airlines. I arrived in Fresno in January of 2013, and 2 weeks later we went with the airline and introduced the concept of common use gates. As Mark said, we had common use ticket counters for a number of years, and everything was fine. Airlines were happy with it. But what was changing was that because we have an airport that services 10 airlines, but we only have 8 gates, we had to transition away from the preferential use lease concept. And we transitioned into a per turn, not a per turn, but it was a 3-tier per landing fee structure. And it was massaged a number of times so that we could achieve equity among all the airlines. And the problem was the airlines did not want to give up their real estate, and they hate equity. The established airlines, the Uniteds, the Americans that had 10 to 15 daily turns, wanted to keep their space. They felt that an activity-based fee structure benefited the smaller airlines, the Allegiants, the Frontiers that only have 3 to 5 flights a week. And whereas the way it was structured under a preferential lease basis, all airlines had to either share a gate or lease an entire gate. It just wasn't going to work. We were experiencing double-digit growth for a number of years. That continued on for several more years. It's down a little bit this year, but over a 4-year period, we experienced almost 20% growth in employments. So we weren't prepared to add gates so everybody could have their own gate, and we wanted to accommodate the low-cost carriers, the Frontiers and the Allegiants, so that we could have some competitive capability in the market. So we stuck to our guns. We transitioned to the 3-tier rate structure and the common use methodology. And what we found most helpful in achieving this, we never achieved total consent on the rate methodology. In fact, over the course of a couple months, we finally went to the regular 80-20 formula for common use space, and the airlines were comfortable with that. But the concept of giving up their preferential leases was based on control of a certain portion of the terminal. They claimed that having their rates based on an activity level rather than a fixed lease penalized them for adding flights. An additional flight will add to their rental cost, which that's a fair argument, but I think we achieved such equity that most airlines' costs would stay the same. What we found to be most beneficial to making this work was to present a policy and a procedure for common use, since all the airlines were going from controlling their gate to losing control of their gate. We established a procedure which created 5 classes of airlines, and those classes were based on the activity levels. Class 1 airline was a signatory that had the largest number of average weekly departures or arrivals in this case. And they were allowed to keep the gates that they historically had. And they were, in terms of requiring additional gates, they had their first choice. So they were basically taken care of. The second class was signatory airlines that had the next group of fewer landings, and and they could only be bumped by a Class 1 airline. It went on down to Class 5, which included charters and irregular ops. They didn't have any choice. They would have to go where we put them. This gained a comfort level. They were okay with this. In fact, their comments were, it was well thought out, but it's not necessary. We would better be able to accommodate new entrants or charters than the airport can do. So let us do it. And then, which of course we didn't agree to. And if we couldn't resolve the issues, then we'll let the airport solve it. So we didn't think that was a good idea. They also suggested that we go to shorter terms, maybe 1-year leases, and give us more opportunities to make adjustments along the way. What it boiled down to was that, like I said, we fixed the problem, their objections to the rate structure from a 3-tier to just an 80-20 formula. Everybody pays the same basis. And one of the airlines asked us to look at the structure that Des Moines, Iowa has. And we looked at that. Our problem was we don't have spare gates. Most airports have more gates than they have airlines, and they have those gates to use as common use while the airlines can have their real estate. We didn't have that scenario, so we stuck with this methodology, and 2 years later, nothing's really changed. Nothing's changed from the airline standpoint, and nothing's changed from the airport standpoint. We just have the abilities to move people as we can, as we need to. Thank you.
Bob has been doing just a number of different things, not only in his career from JFK, from the time that he moved to San Jose. You've been airside, you did security, you're landside, but you're an ops guy. How does if you will, the conundrum, the complexities that Dan was talking about, is it something that you've seen or worked with?
Oh, absolutely. As an ops guy, I mean, it boils down to arrival and departure processes, and you look at it as a flow. And as Mark has said, I've worked in Kennedy Airport in a common use environment at Terminal 4, and now I've been in San Jose. And just as a premise to that, I think it's really important that you first even understand what your business model is. At Terminal 4, back at Kennedy, we had a terminal that had 16 gates and 35 international carriers, 17 hard stands, and we were remoting people in and out of the building. But when we started building that terminal, right from the beginning, we had told our airline tenants at the time, we are going to be a 100% shared use terminal. There is no question about that. That's the business model that we're going forward with. And it's interesting when you're dealing with the local managers that are not perhaps familiar with the common use technology. They're familiar with it from a corporate level, at an airline level. It's very prevalent in Europe, but it was coming to the United States. It's going back to like 1997, where it was relatively a new concept coming to the States. And so the local management may not have been totally familiar with it. And as a colleague had referred to a little bit earlier, they were very protective of their fiefdoms and their proprietary equipment, and they were not very eager to move into a shared use environment. It makes them nervous when you take their areas of control away from them and put them in a common use environment. And the fear is that you'll be moving the plane around every day, and my GSE is going to have to be shifted all over the place. But that's not the case. It really is a relatively static environment. But what it allows you to do is it does give you that flexibility that allows you to run your terminal as efficiently as possible. It protects you when things go wrong, where if a gate breaks down, a passenger boarding bridge breaks down, or a ticket counter at the bank goes bad, IT glitches somewhere, that you can move somebody to a functional facility, or a functional gate, or a functional set of ticket counters. But that is also understanding your business model and then using the shared use as a tool to support your business model in that environment. If you look at a San Jose, you look at the business model in San Jose, and it becomes a different approach. We have kind of two different models. We have Southwest is our anchor carrier. They carry 50+% of our traffic, and they saturate a number of gates in Terminal B, and they use preferential equipment, but they saturate gates, so you don't need to move them around, and they are comfortable with their own equipment at the time, and right now. Thinking about shared use and testing with it, but looking forward to it, as you've heard a number of times, it does save time and money for the airlines themselves when you don't have to fly a tech in to fix your IT problems, and you can shift things around when things go bad. But when you've got an anchor carrier such as the Southwest, it's okay not to have shared use there, but in a different part of our airport, we have a number of different carriers, and therefore shared use in some of those cases does make sense, because then you can move around. All right, I got a couple of facts that I pulled up over the course of the weekend, and just wanted to share that with you. When you start talking about technologies as a tool to look at your future business model, but just real quick, I wanted to share with you that CETA says by 2034 that there'll be 7.3 billion people that will travel through airports, which is twice the number of today's passengers. And an additional 37,000 or more aircraft will be in service, twice the number of today. That's an Airbus estimate. And Eurocontrol talks about, and Eurocontrol is the European Organization for Safety of Air Navigation. They're forecasting 50% more flights through Europe in 2035 versus today. That leaves about 1.9 million flights unaccommodated for. So when you look at the passengers and the planes that you need to push in and out of your airport and really make that arrival and departure flow work very well, shared use becomes extremely important. And you've heard a lot about shared use today, and it does work, but you have to understand your business model and where to deploy it and how to deploy it. But there are other things as an upper sky, and just looking at some of the other functionality in terminals. When you're thinking about master planning and building a terminal and going through environmental studies and what it takes to get to a full master plan, it could take 5 to 20 years before you can actually build something. But you have to start thinking out in advance of what it is that you're going to use to get people in and out of your terminal. And I know that something that has to be a real serious concern for us going forward, and is starting to happen, is self-service. Just to get away from the common use theme a little bit, but self-service is extremely important. A lot of airlines are starting to dabble in it. Alaska, I just read the other day, is thinking about e-thumb technology to check in, and different technologies that will expedite the process of self-service tagging of bags, self-service passengers dropping their bags, more kiosks, which means how you design your terminal lobby and how you design your check-in area to accommodate more self-service types of functions versus the full-service check-in and your normal bag drop type of facilities. So there's a number of different things that you can consider in addition to shared use. Self-service is certainly one of them. The other thing that I've come across just recently is beacons. And maybe some people have heard about beacons or not, but when you're looking at expediting people through your process, whether it's a fully functional passenger or what we came across the other day in some conversations we were having, a visually impaired passenger with a seeing eye dog, that these beacons can be installed in your terminal that actually sends information to your smartphone that help you navigate your way through the terminal, provides information on the airport, provides information on ground transportation services and things along those lines that can help you find your way through the airport and then beyond the airport, where you're going to get your transportation or what are points of interest in the city that you may want to go see. And you can also send audio type of instructions as well, which helps that visually impaired passenger that's going through the terminal. Just looking at some of my other notes here. Tracking passengers, something else that when you talk about financial success in an airport and understanding your passengers' behavior when they get through security, where are they going, where are they spending time, where are they dwelling, where are they spending their money. And if you don't have that data collection to understand where those hotspots are and accommodating that passenger's buying wants and but by tracking those past years and seeing that flow and where the bottlenecks are as well. Again, arrival departure processes, it needs to be a smooth flow. And if you have a bottleneck somewhere, it's security or at your curb or wherever it may be, you need to be able to understand those bottlenecks and smooth those out to make that process work. And the last thing I'll mention is just from my perspective, running the landside operations now, is bringing technology into the airport that provides a different kind of service, and then other static historical companies, TNCs, the Ubers of the world. You know, they're out there. We're working at San Jose to work through a process of perhaps being able to permit them here to operate at our airport, but there's a lot of considerations that go into that. But it is a new technology. It's a technology-driven business. It's a service that your customers are looking for, but then it's the competition with taxis, and taxis have to start thinking about evolving their operations as well so that they can compete in a technologically driven world. And so all of these things kind of come together, again, to circle back around and wrap it up, is to make sure that as an ops guy, my arrival process is as absolutely as smooth and efficient as it can be, as well as my departure process, getting planes and people in and out of my airport as quickly as I can and as efficiently as I can, and technology is absolutely a tool to help me do that.
Thank you, Bob. When I was doing the introductions, I didn't talk a lot about Jim. Jim and I just met about maybe a year and a half ago. And the reason I like what he brings to the party is he is an IT guy who thinks about IT in the right frame of reference. He thinks about IT as what, again, the theme that we've tried to articulate here. When Sacramento was going through their major build program, the guy that was his predecessor, who's now the IT guru at the county level, Steve Baird. Steve was brought in because he was a technologist. He didn't speak airports, and they didn't want someone who spoke airports. They wanted somebody who could come in and marry forward-looking deliverables against the technology that would adapt to the game plan that they had on the table for taking away the old terminal, building the new terminal, doing all of the things that they've done to make Sacramento a world-class airport. So, Jim, it's up to you, bud.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm a little bit at a disadvantage here because a lot of the stuff has been put up here as we're enabling technology for future-proof airports. And my opinion is that technology, just like you mentioned, is more of a tool. That it's not the thing that's in the way. It's actually tuning the business processes, being creative about your solutions, than it is about that technology. Technology to me is easy. The hard parts, which is actually what I was going to focus on here, is predicting the need. You have to go beyond. I'm sorry, I have a quiet voice too. You have to go beyond what you think your job might be. You have to touch the people around you. You have to be able to see the business holistically. You need to be able to dissect it and break it down. And you have to do that, obviously, within what's usually a political environment. So you have to be able to persuade folks to actually move on technologies that will benefit the organization. And with that, you have to quantify that need, whatever they're looking at, because a lot of people will go from the point of picking a solution and saying, here IT, this is what I want to implement, versus actually breaking it down into what's going to serve their need. So getting to that need rather than their wants is sometimes difficult for us. You also have to understand the motivations. Some people like toys. Some people, see something at home and they go, oh, this is what, we should really implement. Again, you have to push hard to get what is the must-have, and that usually nets you an efficiency. There's do what you should and not what you can. Often we get caught up, especially the technical side, we kind of go a little bit crazy with building these things that are over capacity or does all these bells and whistles and doesn't necessarily score on the base level. When you're developing creative solutions, make sure that you present alternatives. Don't just say, here's your only solution, this is what you got to do, this is how you got to do it. And look for things outside the norm. Sometimes there's some solutions out there that haven't been implemented in other airports that may fully fit your business model. Little commentary here about incorporating a personal philosophy for the development of your solutions. Recently, I don't know if you've seen a trend in YouTube, but I've seen something that disturbs me a little bit because, and I'm just using them as an example. Hopefully they won't come find me, right? But it used to be when it initially came out that there was hardly any advertising. And then they introduced advertising where you could like click on it to skip it. And more recently I'm seeing 15-second ads that you have to watch before you can actually watch what you're looking for. And even then, sometimes they'll throw up a whole bunch of pop-ups in your face as well. So when you talk about implementing things like beacons or applications that reach out to the customers, make sure that they have a choice in that. Make sure that they have an opt-in ability. Make sure that they don't feel like the airport is just jamming something down their throat. Related to that is just avoid Big Brother. I mean, maybe Little Brother is good enough. And finally for me, I'm going to make this pretty short. In an after action, when you look at something that has been implemented that you're now going to have to maintain, learn from your failures because you're going to have some. Seek the what, mentally note the who, just in case there's a repeat performance. But most importantly, apply the why. Why was that a failure? How can we make it better? And when you do have a victory, make sure you celebrate it. That's it.
By design, we left a bit of time here for these guys to, either do a family feud or be okay with each other, and to reach out and see if there are any Q&A things, experiences that you have suffered. Jeff, I see your hand up, and I know you guys have gone through a lot of effort in your terminal modernization and the concourses and things of that nature. I'm just guessing. Okay, that's fine. See you next fall.
Do you have a trigger where you can reallocate your space and your levels based on an airline changing its schedule? Is there a trigger where the airport gets to go in, okay guys, it's time to reallocate because this airline grew and this airline didn't? So you have something in your lease to deal with that?
Yes, we do. We do. It's not defined, but we have verbiage in the policy and procedures that any changes can be initiated by the director with collaboration with the airlines. In the case of the U.S.-American merger, U.S. gave up some space, some exclusive use space. They just didn't need it. It was redundant for them. But we allowed them to each keep their gate. We relocated their gates because they weren't contiguous, which bumped a couple other airlines, and we just determined that it was better for the airport and better for all the airlines that they have gates adjacent to each other, and the relocation of the airlines was of no consequence.
Any other hands? Yes, one in the back. Jorge.
Hi, Bob. This is for you. I don't know if you remember, but I used to work at JFK Airport. We never met when you were there, but I have to share that I used to work at Terminal 2, where the gates and the ticket counters were assigned to a individual airline. And then when I got moved to Terminal 4 and using the common use system, I loved it. So it is definitely an improvement. I just wanted to comment on that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment that it works great at Terminal 4. And I would agree. Again, going back to the business model, when you've got 35 international carriers and very limited resources, it really does serve you very well to be able to have a shared use environment, that allows you that flexibility. To the previous gentleman's question, though, I think you also have to think about the level of flexibility that you're looking to achieve. In Terminal 4's case, because we needed maximum flexibility, we were able to shift ticket counters around relatively easily without notice. Very careful about doing it. And we were able to move planes around. In other cases, you may want a little longer term commitment. You may do an annual reallocation of resources with a longer term commitment from the airline. But you have to figure out your own business model and what works well for your terminal or your airport as far as that level of flexibility that you do offer in shared use. Because you really do want to have the airlines have a stable environment and not move them around too much. But you also have to understand the airports and the terminals' need for those resources as well.
A couple of thoughts that I would share with you from customer experiences, both on the airline as well as the airport side. Airports, if you are considering flexible provisioning with either common or shared use, interchangeable terms, they have a little different connotation, but we're not going to go into that here. Engage your airlines early and often. Make sure that it is a collaborative discussion and a collaborative effort. Otherwise, you're going to wind up spitting in the canteen, and you don't want to pollute the waters. You truly don't. Also, when you're looking at major terminal master planning, as was talked about on the panel, invite IT to the table early and often. Do not, if you can avoid it, place all of the special systems and infrastructure components under a standard chapter section contract, because you often will find that a general contractor who is using that type of terminology does not have the level of understanding about the special systems in their environment that you as an airport operator are looking to address business challenges and business opportunities with. Thank you all very much. I believe we've gotten the sessions pretty much back on track. Can you give it up for these guys? The sponsor for this session, thank you very much, was First Alarm Security and Control. And to say thank you for the guys who shared, if you will, different thoughts. Airport director guy, airport ops guy, airport IT guy. We have the recognition associated with the Wounded Warrior Project for your time and efforts today. Good luck and God bless. Thanks.